It took her walking away for me to finally sort of get the message, to see, actually, it's not her, it's me.
My wife had her bags packed, ready to leave. I was crying on the floor thinking that this was over between the two of us. We as men need the stakes to become so high to actually take action. Why do you think that
men need the pain to be high enough for them to confront the things that they don't want to see? You don't have to have it all figured out. You just need to feel confident that you're...
And welcome to the podcast, Jasper. How are you doing?
Good, Alessandro. Thank you for having me.
You said to me in our little pre-podcast conversation, you said, it took me losing her to start prioritizing the work. What do you mean by that? Or take us into that moment specifically. Tell us where you were and tell us what made you realize that. And then eventually, I want to know what the work actually is.
For me, this was the culmination of a number of years of our relationship being dysfunctional, fighting a lot, getting back together, breaking up, just kind of chaos. And there was this sort of tension between what she was asking for and I was unwilling to give, unwilling to sort of shift into the kind of behavior that would have allowed our relationship to actually be healthy. And the final straw was basically her walking away. And the pain of that, the woman that I had spent so long trying to get and convince to be with me and to win over, essentially, I'd been looking for that specific kind of relationship my whole life, essentially. And it took her walking away for me to finally sort of get the message, to see, actually, it's not her, it's me.
Okay.
And that was, very painful sort of confrontation with the fact that I was dismissing her feelings, not making her feel emotionally safe, just not creating the kind of trust that the relationship needed in order to move forward and actually become something more profound and more secure. And that was the kind of the tipping point for me where I said, okay, now I'm going to look at the mirror and see everything that she was pointing to that I couldn't previously see.
That's really interesting because I feel like I have a very similar way in, like I talk about it, maybe people have heard this already on the podcast, but I talk about, I remember there was one moment where like my wife had her bags packed, ready to leave. And, I was crying on the floor thinking that this was over between the two of us. And it was only after the culmination of that conversation, there was a lot more that happened in that conversation, but that was only the only point where I was willing to actually look back at myself when the stakes get so high. Why do you think that we as men need the stakes to become so high to actually take action? And do you think men can break that pattern and do it beforehand?
I'm sure you've seen this in coaching. I've seen it hundreds of times in coaching, is that men often need the pain to be high enough for them to confront the things that they don't want to see. Because it's very painful to look at the things that we've done, the mistakes that we've made, all of the times that we've caused her pain, perhaps the areas that we really need to work on, and the lack of skill development, the lack of empathy, the lack of awareness. And generally as men, we emerge into a culture that doesn't really teach us to prioritize sensitivity, empathy, emotional intelligence, and that's what a relationship or the initiation of a relationship really gives us. Is, actually, if I want to be with a beautiful, sensitive, sexy woman, I need to actually develop the skill set that's going to enable her to feel safe and to relax in my presence. And I think we can definitely learn that before it gets too painful. It's just most of the time I think men need to feel the pain in order to actually begin the uncomfortable work of looking in the mirror.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think most of the men who are probably listening to this are already feeling that pain. They wouldn't even listen to the podcast. We're blissfully unaware, floating along in life thinking, my gosh, why is everyone else the problem? Which is a very interesting thing. But that probably comes from, when I think about it, I think that feels society-wise nowadays. It feels like we've got a lot of men that are very unaware. And I only know that from being that very unaware man myself. Would you relate to that, and do you have any idea why?
Well, as I've sort of matured, and sort of one of the most beautiful gifts of this whole initiation for me through the fire of relationship has been really starting to understand the feminine experience. And by opening myself towards my own emotional experience and my needs and my feelings, that actually enabled me to really start to contact and understand my woman in a much, much deeper way. And not just my woman, but the collective experience of the feminine in the world at the moment. And if we look at the moment that we're in as a society, we're just moving through this very difficult transition where the sort of traditional blueprint for relationships has been fractured. The traditional gender norms are no longer there. All of this is changing. Feminism has flipped the board, essentially. Women have empowered themselves, and at the same time, they're processing an immense backlog of trauma and pain and repression from having essentially been second-class citizens and experienced an enormous amount of pain at the hands of men or, patriarchy or the masculine. And so all of that pain's getting processed, and women kind of hate men at the moment. And they're also asking men to be different and protecting and providing, and this is not enough anymore. Most modern women can take care of themselves just fine without us, and we actually have to confront the fact that our worth isn't determined by providing protection and provision. It's actually other things. It's actually emotional attunement. It's deep conversation. It's shared growth together. It's emotional intimacy, or sacred sexuality, and all of these other things that women are now calling in that we actually don't know how to deliver.
I agree with that. What's really interesting is that, a lot of the men that I talk to, a lot of their feedback to that is like, why do we need that? That feels like it's all on her terms, right? It's all on her terms. But like, what about what I want? And ironically, if you think about what he wants, it's like, there's no substance to it. It's just peace for peace sake, in a weird way, just to be left alone so that he can, not have responsibility. So why are men not seeing that this is a good thing for them? That this is that emotional maturity and that emotional connection is, when you're actually in it, something so fucking amazing for even for men as well. It's not just the feminine that enjoys it, but the man doesn't see that, right? That's not just my experience.
It's definitely not just your experience. That was also my experience, and I hear the same thing as well. But it's kind of one of those things where you kind of don't know how bad you've got it until you've experienced something different, and then you look back on where you were, and you're like, oh, actually, I was suffering. I was in pain. I was numb. I was cut off to myself, disconnected, depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, and I didn't even know that I was depressed, anxious, and overwhelmed. I was just experiencing. Because
you're just trying to survive.
Just surviving, and that's I wanted an easy partner so that I could manage all of that stuff. And actually, that wasn't actually what I wanted. I actually wanted growth so that I could get out of the position and the state that I was in. Once I evolved and matured out of that stage into a new stage of life, freedom, relaxation, nervous system regulation, secure attachment in my relationship, a woman who wants to fuck me.
If you're listening to the show, you're already asking the right question. How do I show up better? Maybe things feel harder than they should at home. Maybe you know something needs to shift, but you're just not sure where to start. Here's what I know. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you just never got the manual. Nobody teaches men how to be husbands. Nobody shows you how to navigate the hard conversations, regulate your emotions, or turn your marriage into an actual team. That's why I created Better Husband in 2-Minute Emails. It's one email every Saturday morning with one tool you can use that week. There's no therapy speak, no blame, just the skills that actually move the needle. 2 minutes, one Saturday morning, that's your entry point. Because 3 months of focused work beats 20 years repeating the same damn pattern. Links in the show notes. First email lands this Saturday.
Most days of the week, actually, I got everything that I thought. I didn't even know I wanted that. That's what I wanted. I didn't even know that would be the way that I would get it. I thought the way to get what I wanted was by her just accepting things the way that
who you were,
who I was.
Yeah, I remember that line as well. It's like, why don't you accept me for who I am? And I remember one day spouting that at my wife, and this is what I love about my wife. She just looked at me and she said, well, do you truly accept me? And I stopped It was one of the first times that it came in, and I was just like, I don't think I actually do. I think I want you to be easier. I think I want you to be less. I think I want you to be less of who you are. Oh, fuck, the problem is me here. And, and that's the beautiful mirror that we're talking about. Brilliant. I'd love to ask you how, you've obviously used this and moved this into coaching, and this experience of nearly losing your partner wasn't the only thing that got you here. There's lots of other experiences that you've gone through. One that you're opening up about currently. I'd love to hear about your time before this and learning to gain a spine, so to speak.
That's an interesting story, and there's a lot to that. But I think, like many men, I never really got the initiation into manhood. I never really got taught how to stand up for myself. I was a people pleaser, bit of a plastic bag of a passive plastic bag of a man.
I'm so sorry for bringing this plastic bag analogy into the world. Everyone keeps saying I was a plastic bag. I was like, look, I came up with that one night, and now people know it.
My partner actually sent me that reel of yours, and she's like, this guy, he gets it. This guy's good. I'm like, oh, actually, I'm going on his podcast.
Oh, fuck.
But for me, that was also a very archetypal initiation. Basically experiencing the pain and the frustration and the resentment that built up. I was a part of a spiritual sort of cult-like group, a school that I was a part of, a yoga school, tantric yoga school for a number of years. And one of the big lessons for that in that for me was that, first of all, observing how our minds are corrupted and influenced and manipulated to believe things in a certain way and position us in a certain way. It doesn't happen just in cults, it's happening all the time. And so one of my sort of core messages and things that I'm trying to teach is how to free your mind, how to think for yourself, how to actually insulate yourself against all of the propaganda and the media wars and everything. It's chaos out there, and we need to be careful about how we think.
Let's pull that back. I know you're only opening up to this now, and I can tell that it's a sensitive topic in here, but how did you start with this cult? What was the inside? No one just wakes up one day and says, okay, I'm going to join a cult. You think you're joining something, and then obviously to some degree it becomes something else, right?
Yeah. I joined a tantric workshop, essentially. Started doing yoga classes, and basically it was amazing, beautiful experiences, very powerful spiritual practices, beautiful women. I was actually looking for my partner. I was looking for this kind of relationship that I now have, and that kind of opened me up. I was traveling, exploring spirituality, and that was the doorway in. And I guess I got sucked into an organization that had some really beautiful things about it, really amazing community, powerful spiritual teachings, beautiful women, ticked all my boxes. What I wasn't aware of, and because I was also disconnected from myself, I didn't have emotional attunement or emotional intelligence. I didn't have well-established boundaries, and I certainly didn't have a spine. I missed the red flags. I didn't notice, and I thought it was okay to be gaslighted, to be sort of pushed around, to be sort of shamed into compromising my boundaries, my standards, and my needs, essentially. And so I tolerated a lot of things that I otherwise, looking back on now, I was like, why the fuck did I let that happen? Why didn't I stand up for myself? Why didn't I say something? But looking back, I can see I just didn't have the foundational education. I didn't have the skill set. I wasn't initiated into manhood. I was a boy, I was a boy in a man's body running around through the world chasing women, and ended up getting sucked into a cult for 6 years.
What did that look like, being sucked in? Where were you? What was day-to-day life like in that?
I mean, it started in India. It started as yoga workshops and tantra workshops, and it soon became my entire life. I sort of devoted myself to the path, started adopting an entire ideology and belief system around this, believing that I was one of the special ones, one of the chosen to be on this very special spiritual path and teaching, to be close to the guru, and basically gave up my entire sort of aspirations in life to just go all in on spirituality, which on the one hand was actually, there's a very powerful experience there, and it really gave me a powerful foundation of practice, dedicated daily practice. I was practicing 4, 5, 7, 8 hours a day for years. And at the same time, it was also extremely relationally dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of, I met my partner within the context of this school, and it was messy, very messy.
What was the point at which you felt the red flags? Did you feel that was your decision to leave this situation? And how did that come about, where you were like, okay, I'm going through this ability to speak for myself now? How did that come about? And where was that story?
Basically, over time, all of this stuff started building up on the shelf, on the back shelf. I started to see different things, red flags, things that I wasn't fully comfortable with. And then I found out that the main teacher, the spiritual guide of the school, was basically trafficking all of the women around the world to him to receive the sexual initiation in person from him. And he's a 76-year-old man. And I wasn't comfortable with that. And I'd heard stories of abuse, and that was when I kind of finally, the straw that broke the camel's back, and I decided I don't stand for this. It felt like a corruption of the very thing that I was preaching and practicing myself.
Mm-hmm.
It was in fact a violation of the spiritual principles. It wasn't love. It wasn't conscious. It was manipulation. It was control and coercion.
Yeah.
So that was a sort of watershed moment for me, where I actually started to stand up and took a position of opposition against that and said, this isn't right.
Yeah.
And that was basically the catalyst for us to leave.
Okay. And then you and your partner left together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Good job on doing that. I think, as much as we see these things, I think these are the moments that we look at and we actually realize as men, if we stand up and say no, we start to form a voice. Because I think this is something you and I touched on before off camera, but I believe that often when you think about this work, people think that, I just have to please the woman and say, yes, dear, happy wife, happy life, and then lose all sense of yourself. But in actual fact, what our women and mostly what the work requires of us is to find out what our no's are in life. To find out what is a no and actually stand for something, and not be so passive that we just float along. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, man. And it was, it was my no that ultimately ended up convincing her that she could trust me. It was me taking a stand that actually enabled her to feel safer with me, because she saw that I wasn't just going to abandon my position or abandon my responsibilities or abandon her at the first sign of challenge or, something shifting. She saw that I actually had a direction. I had a certain sense of principles and values that I stood by, that actually made me in integrity. I had something to be, aligned with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to actually have integrity as a man. It's one of the biggest ones that, I think one of the biggest unmet needs that we don't really think about as men, but it's one of those things that a woman judges us on.
Yeah.
She judges us on.
And I didn't realize how out of integrity I was. And since learning how to be in integrity, I look back and then I was like, holy shit. I actually had to go through the pain of being so out of integrity that I hated myself. I didn't even trust myself. My word was, my word meant nothing. Because I was lying so much and doing all of these clever gymnastics to get my way. And that was so painful that, she ended up leaving me because of it. And then I had to look at all of that and go, oh, fuck. That's why integrity is important. Because if I don't have integrity, I don't stand for anything. And then how the fuck could she trust me? Of course she doesn't trust me. Of course she doesn't feel safe. Of course she doesn't want to fuck me.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think all of that doubles and triples when you're aiming to start a family and things like this. You know, there's within the feminine, it tests us. It requires of us that integrity, and if we're moving away from it, then it'll find a way to poke a hole right in a sore spot to see if you've really changed or not. So tell me about this moment when she leaves you, like, and then you say you had to look at yourself and you had to go through the work. You know, I mean, I can hear many men right now, probably I can almost hear them shouting at the screen going, but what the fuck does the work actually look like? You know, you keep saying the work, but like, what is that?
Well, I mean, I think it can be different things for different men, but I can tell you what it was for me. Mm-hmm. For me, it was looking at and starting to confront my inner experience, my feelings, my unmet needs, the boundaries that I'd that I hadn't held or had been walked all over. Mm. And her leaving actually caused me to have a breakdown. I just cried and cried and cried because I'd lost this woman who I loved so much. And in that pain, in the meeting of that grief, that actually broke something open in me. Mm. I actually started to feel and process and sit with what I was trying to avoid for so long, the emotional stuff, the stuff that I thought was unattractive, the stuff that I thought that she didn't want to see. That was actually what she wanted to see all along. She wanted to see the real me, the me who didn't have it all together, the me who was struggling, the me who had his doubts and fears. And by sort of realizing that and having that kind of like come to Jesus moment of like, holy fuck, the thing that she wanted was actually this. And by being cut off and denying her this, I've actually pushed her away. Mm-hmm. And within that, there was beauty as well, because I started to feel so much. I was like, look how much I care. Mm-hmm. Look how much sensitivity and emotion and complexity is actually here. My inner world actually got a lot richer, a lot deeper, a lot more meaningful. Mm-hmm. And through that, I actually able to understand her much more. Mm-hmm. Because I understood why she felt so upset when when I wasn't listening to her. Mm-hmm. I understood how important it is to actually empathize and to be in connection emotionally with her, because I felt that pain of being so disconnected from myself. And then I was able to actually sort of integrate all of that. And then actually, after I think we had maybe 3-4 months of a break, I actually went to her and I just put all of this on the table. I said, look, I get it. I see it now.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm going to do about that. I'm going to take responsibility for it. I hired a coach. I started working on conscious communication. I started learning conflict resolution. I started developing emotional intelligence and understanding what my needs were, so I could actually understand what her needs were and start meeting those needs. And it was that kind of dedicated, focused commitment to doing that kind of work, the relational work, let's say, that convinced her, okay, this guy's clearly understood something. I still love him. I do want to be with him, but here's the conditions, this is what needs to happen. And I was able to actually come proactively and be like, look, this is what I think we need to do. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go back. There's no going back to what we were doing, because that's fucked.
Yeah.
Here's what moving forward looks like to me. What does it look like for you? What do you need?
Yeah.
And so she was impressed, she was convinced by that sort of amount of responsibility and direction. Mm-hmm. And that ultimately sort of like carried us through.
I love that. And anyone hearing this, obviously it's going to look different for every single person, but I think there's some real absolute beauty in what Jasper is saying. It's just, you have to look at the inner workings of yourself. And I think there was something that you reminded me of when you were talking about how she wanted the vulnerable side of you. She wanted the real you. Because interestingly, I think we as men, we're trying so hard to get women from the start. And because we're trying so hard to get women, we project or create a version of ourselves that we think that they would like. And so if I could imagine this fragile, better version of me, sitting there, he's probably doesn't have emotions. He's cool. He doesn't, he's collected. He's got his shit together. And then the problem is life has a way of sifting through bullshit, and the feminine has a way of seeing through bullshit. And then the moment that someone sees through the bullshit of the little version of you that you've created, you have to try and defend it.
Yeah.
You have to try and hold it up because shit, somewhere in my head I've told myself that if that version of me is not there, she'll see the real me and she'll probably leave me for the real me. And it's actually the opposite, where she's really wanting to see the real you. And it comes down to a line that you said to me off camera as well, is we gain power from going into feelings instead of us getting weaker. We gain power from going into that.
That's certainly been my experience, because what I found and discovered in that was authenticity. I'm actually not denying the truth anymore. I don't have to hold up this facade of this perfect man. I can actually be broken. I can be unfinished. I can be in the mess. And I can be, which is the truth. I'm able to actually step into the truth, which is that I don't have it all together. I'm not perfect. I'm fumbling and bumbling my way through this, just like you. I've got skills that I need to develop. I'm working on it, but I'm gonna make mistakes, and that was so fucking freeing for me because actually I can just be me. I can just be me, and she actually likes that more.
Yeah, because it actually takes a lot of fucking effort to hold up that little version of yourself as well.
Oh, it's exhausting, man. It's exhausting, and it's fake, and it doesn't feel real, and we end up hating ourselves because it's not real.
And funnily enough, hating them as well because they're not in love with that version of us. And we like, but look how much work I've done in holding that version up. And every bit of work that you've done in holding that version up, she's resenting that work that you've done. So it's a very funny situation.
One of the things that she actually helped me to do, and this is one of the gifts, one of the beautiful gifts that the feminine, or your wife or your girl, whoever it is in your life who represents the feminine for you, one of the beautiful gifts that they have to give us is this invitation into sensitivity, into feelings, into deeper emotional intelligence. And she said, why don't you go and have a look at the emotional wheel? And I was like, emotional wheel? What the fuck, the emotional wheel? I don't need the emotional wheel. And then we had a fight one day. I was like, maybe I should look at the emotional wheel. Pulled it open and I was like, okay, what's this thing about? And it's basically just a chart of all the available emotions on the spectrum. And I looked at that and I'm like, what am I feeling right now? And I was like, I'm jealous. Oh, jealous. I've never admitted to being jealous before. And then I told her, hey, I'm feeling jealousy. And she's like, oh, you're feeling jealous, babe? And she met it so beautifully. And I was like, it's okay to be jealous. And she's like, actually, I think it's cute. I think it's hot. Like and it actually created connection. Yeah. And I was like, actually there's power there when I go and reclaim a connection to an emotion that I thought was not masculine or not okay for me to feel. I actually got to integrate that emotional experience, reclaim the needs that it's connected to, because actually, jealousy actually enabled me to actually stand up for my boundaries, that I don't want her to be leaking sexual energy in the direction of other men. She's my woman. I want to claim her. She actually felt more claimed. And I was like, oh, this is actually just a net positive for the entire relationship, because I went and looked at the fucking emotional wheel and started gaining a bit more vocabulary to articulate why I was upset, enabled her to actually trust me more.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. It happens over and over and over again. It's even, I remember there was a guy now in the Better Husband Academy that just wrote a long thing to the group saying his wife wants him to communicate more. His wife wants him to communicate more. And in it, he's communicating to us. And he's like, I don't understand what she means, because the moment she says this, I'm feeling this, and this. And I feel so lost. I feel like I've never had the vocabulary to say what I want to say. And I feel this. And I just, at the end of all of this huge rant, I said, have you actually said that to her? Why don't you just read that verbatim to her? Because that is communication. And he's like, I never thought of it like that. Like, oh God. We just do it with each other, because we feel a little bit safer. And I think that's the thing, is this, there's a deep-seated fear that we're trying to protect here from sharing our emotions. Because I think the moment we open up our emotions, we're vulnerable. And I think a lot of work has been put on to try and create a wall, and then you open that up and you're terrified that you'll be attacked in that moment.
Yeah.
Because the moment you open, somebody laughed at you at some point in your life, and you don't want that to be her, because that would hurt more than fucking anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons. Maybe
Well, and it's exactly there that we need to develop the capacity to be mature and have enough inner strength to be able to handle being not met perfectly. Maybe you share something and she doesn't receive it the way that you intended it. Maybe she uses it against you at a later date and flips it around on you. Can you develop enough strength and maturity inside of you to be able to handle that? Instead of running away and wrapping yourself in bubble wrap, can I be resilient enough to express the truth and have it not handled perfectly or used against me, and then still be able to stay open and create a culture in my relationship where we value and prioritize the truth rather than avoidance or, creating a false image of how things are?
Yeah.
Isn't that more empowering than pretending all of the time or avoiding conversations that are difficult or avoiding expressing vulnerable feelings because we're afraid?
Yeah.
Why not have courage instead and learn to go towards that? For me, that seems so logically so much more empowering to figure out how can I develop myself enough so that I can feel free enough to be able to do that and meet her like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful too, that's that. And it's, I think anyone who really speaks against that really is speaking against growth. Speaking against growth. We don't have many frontiers in modern society, and I think the biggest frontier that we face is emotional frontiers, our own being. It is the biggest one. It's like the biggest mountain or to climb or to conquer and we will never do it fully, because the moment you do it, something else will pop up and it'll come forward. But that is in my view, it is the most worthy mission there is to conquer the inner mountain. And there's not much else to conquer, outwards. Sure, you could be an Olympian, but even still, at the end of it, you'll come back, and when you're 60, you'll have to go inward again. And so I think it's anyone who says anything against what you just said is just really resisting that growth, that inward mountain, that inner mountain.
And that's what the feminine is protesting against. That's what women around the world are up in arms about, is men who refuse to grow, who refuse to evolve. And that's why, most of the relationship dysfunction is her wanting something different, the man resisting that change because he doesn't want to grow. And it's that tension that creates so much of the opposition, so much of the conflict, and so much of the divorce or breakup.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't room to grow.
Yeah.
I often say to clients, you don't have to have it all figured out. You just need to feel confident that you're moving in the right direction together, that you have a plan, a strategy for positive growth, to feel like, it may not be perfect right now. Maybe we've got some big fucking problems on our plate, but at least we have a direction and positive momentum in that direction to feel like, okay, if things aren't perfect, at least they're starting to get better. And we have a plan of how they're going to become great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Half the battle right there.
All right, everyone listening, if you're hearing that is exactly what you got to do. Make sure you have a plan of where to go. Is this the kind of stuff you talk about on your podcast?
I talk about it a lot on my podcast. For me, the most important thing is clarity. I love understanding things. I love putting things together and connecting the dots and creating basically strategy or maps for moving from where we are to where we want to be, whether that's in the relational domain or in the domain of consciousness or with your life purpose. I just want to I want to know where I am, what are the obstacles in my path, and how do I overcome those to get to the next level, because I thrive when I feel that momentum. I thrive when I'm feeling growth. I thrive when my mind is expanding and I feel like reality is getting deeper and better all the time. And so that's what I really try to teach, is just connecting all of the dots, solving the problems that we're facing, and how do we move to higher levels and, new stages of growth.
Beautiful. I'll put the link for your podcast in the description below. But let me know, Jasper, is there anything else you want to share today before we jump off?
Well, I'm curious about you, man. I'm curious if there's anything that I've shared here that opened up a door inside of you or connected something that you haven't heard before, or maybe some of your story.
I love the way you've put things together. I think what's interesting here is I see that just by listening to you. So for everyone listening to this, Jasper and I we've met before in person like years ago, both when we both weren't doing this work, both when we were different people, I would say, both when we were passive or when we, quote unquote, hadn't found the pathway to manhood. And interestingly enough, we both went through very different ways to get here. Very different ways to get here. For me, it was a mixture of my wife, but it was also a mixture of my father dying and having to come to that, go through that process. And then in that, it opened me up and I had to find out what a man was without having that father figure. And then, having mentors. And I, like you said, you have a coach there as well. I had like Dr. Anna Rubinstein from the Rites of Passage Institute. And I was very grateful that kind of came through me and to me on that. So listening to you, it's wonderful because, like I said, we've known each other from a different time, and yet we've both arrived at similar places. And this just comes through life, and it's a validation for me that this is the pathway, if that makes sense.
Yeah, beautiful. It was a huge initiation for me as well when I lost my father just a few years ago. And yeah, just hearing you say that just reminded me of like how big a piece that is in terms of like almost an archetypal initiation from boyhood into manhood, because you no longer have the father figure above you, and rather you have to take on that mantle of responsibility of like, oh, it's on me now.
Exactly.
I can't be. I'm not the boy anymore. I can't be the boy anymore.
It hit me even bigger. I mean, we're going to another level here, but the other day, I was being questioned on my why by my mentor Anna, and he was questioning me on the why. And straight after that phone call, that was when Julia came to me and showed me the pregnancy result that she was pregnant. And I had all these answers for my why, all these, like, I feel society needs this and this and this and this and this. And then when that came through and that was confirmed, I was like, none of that mattered. And this is getting back to the point of the father. I ended up that night going down to try and write my why, and instead I wrote a letter to my future child.
Oh.
And at the end of it, I wrote, "Love, Dad." And I looked down at the word dad, and I'd only ever spoken about or thought of the word dad in relation to my dad. But now I was him through that. And that to me was, there's so many emotions that go into that, but it's kind of also a beautiful thing where you almost embody the energy of dad, and you're like, oh, I'm the man through that now. Like that's me now. And that's what I'm going to need to be moving forward.
Thanks for sharing that, man. That's really beautiful.
All good, man. All good. All right, Jasper. I'm sure we're going to have loads more conversations in the future, either on my podcast or your podcast. But thanks for joining today.
Thanks, brother. Cheers.
That's the episode. That's all I got for you today. I just want you to remember you're not alone in this. Make sure you subscribe to stay connected, of course, and comment your win, because every time a man sees other men winning, they don't feel alone anymore, and I love that. Tools are in the show notes, starting with the Better Husband in 2-minute emails. Let's build this together. I'll see you next week.